Hey everyone, Mr. Skelton here. We are back at it, Lesson 5, Unit 1, and today we're going to be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines and focusing in on their slopes and what the slopes have to do with identifying whether two lines are parallel or whether two lines are perpendicular. You have done this before. We did this in Algebra 1. You also spent a decent amount of time in geometry on this, and so now we're hitting it a third time in Honors Algebra 2. So hopefully this goes fairly painless for you, and you recall some of this information about slopes, parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's jump right into it right away, down at the bottom first slide here. So I know you see a lot of lines here. We're going to focus on this line right here for right now. Okay, I'm just going to kind of color it in, just kind of give it a red so you can kind of see that I'm focusing on that one. And it says find the slope of the following line. So what we want to do is carefully pick out a point on this line where it crosses the grid. So like 1, 1. I can see that this line crosses the grid at 1, 1. And let's find another point that it looks like it goes through. Oh, let's see here. Let's go, how about this one right here? So it looks like we're going to go, if we want to find this slope, we just do rise over run. All right, you can either go down 1, 2, 3, and to the right 2, which would be rise over run, so that would be negative 3, 2, or you can go up 1, 2, 3 to the left 2, so that would be 3 over negative 2. Okay, remember that those are the exact same thing, whether you put the negative sign on the top or the bottom, it's still negative 3 over 2. Okay, that would be the slope. And if you look at these other lines here, and we'll just do another one. I know there's multiple ones here, but I'm going to try to find another. I'll try to do the line that's right next to it. See if I can find, there's one here. Okay, 1, 2, 3 over 2 right there. So I'm going up 1, 2, 3 to the left 2. So this line also has a slope of negative 3 over 2. So what do we know about lines that are parallel? You hopefully remember that they have the same slope, or their slopes are equal to each other. Okay? And so if we turn the page here, I just have a finish the statement. Slopes of parallel lines are equal. Okay. Perpendicular. So you can see here, let's find this line right here. Let's focus on this line first. Let me see if I can find the slope of that line. Looks like it's going up here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. So this slope of this line right here is up 5 and to the right 2. So that is, I'll put it over on here, 5/2 for the slope of this line. Now let's find the slope of one of these lines. Let's see if I can find a point here. I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I go down and to the right, that's going to be down 2 and to the right 5. What do you notice about the slope of this line compared to the slope of this line? Well, in your Algebra 1 days and Geometry days, we call those opposite reciprocals, or negative reciprocals of one another. Another way to think about it, if two lines are perpendicular, if you multiply their slopes together, they become negative 1. And you can see that right here. If I take this one that I've circled in blue, which is 5 over 2, and this slope of this line, which is negative 2 over 5, you would get negative 1. So if you multiply the two slopes together, they would equal negative 1. That is true of all lines that are perpendicular. If you were to find the slope of this line as well, it would also be down. Let's see if I can do it real quick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, that's negative 2/5. So you can see that each of these lines are parallel to each other. These have the same slope. So these are parallel, but both of them are perpendicular to this line with a slope of 5/2. So let's finish the statement on the back side. Slopes of perpendicular lines are, I'll say, opposite reciprocals. Okay? Or negative reciprocals. Now let's apply some of that knowledge to some equations. This one says find the slope of a line that is parallel to this line. Well, if you notice, this is in standard form. Hopefully you recall standard form. I'm just going to write it. You don't have to know that for this, but it's good to know that that's in standard form. What I would do is put this in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So I would subtract the 2x to the other side, plus 14, and divide everything by 7, and I'd have y equals negative 2/7 x plus 2. That is my y equals mx plus b. It says find the slope of a line that is parallel to this. So this is line 1, and so we would know that the slope would have to be negative 2/7. Next question says, what would the slope of a line be that would be perpendicular to this? Well, remember that it's just the opposite reciprocal. So if this one is negative already, this one would just be 7/2. The slope of a line that would be perpendicular to this would be 7/2, because this times this would give you the -1. Okay? Let's move on. So on this question here, number 2, it says find the slope that is, I like to underline because a lot of students will forget perpendicular versus parallel, so kind of highlight it. Find the slope of the line that is perpendicular to this line. Go ahead and hit pause, try it, and then check back with me after you hit play. Okay, so likewise, this is in standard form. I want to convert this into slope-intercept form. So I would subtract 3x, because that's a positive 3x, so I would subtract it. That's a positive 8, so plus 8. Again, we're getting y by itself. Divide everything by -4, and I get y equals, that becomes a positive 3/4 x minus 2. Now, my slope, I'm just going to identify it off to the side. I know that it's 3/4. The question says find the slope of a line that's perpendicular. So if I wanted a perpendicular line, the slope of that perpendicular line would have to be -4/3, because it has to be an opposite reciprocal of the 3/4. So that would be my answer to question 2. Next question says, number 3 says the following lines, so this is like line 1, this would be line 2. These two lines here, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Well, in line 1, it's kind of nice because it's in slope-intercept form already. Remember, y equals mx plus b, that's slope-intercept form, so we're focusing on m. So we know the slope is already 3. We need to convert this into y-intercept form, so I'd subtract the 2x, and I would divide everything by -6, and I'd get y equals 1/3. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, and that would be subtract 2. 12 divided by -6 is -2. I put that in slope-intercept form. That has a slope of 1/3. Now let's look at our slopes. We have to answer the question, is this parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Well, we know it's not parallel because they're not the same. A lot of students will pick perpendicular here because they see that this is 3/1 and this is 1/3, so they're opposite reciprocals, but one of them has to be negative, and since both are positive, that means our answer is neither. So you got to be careful. Remember, one has to be negative if you're going to say perpendicular. All right? Moving on to number 4. Number 4 says, let me get it in the picture, write an equation of a line. So you have to write an equation of a line, which means mx plus b. You have to write y equals mx plus b that is parallel to the given line that goes through the given point. These are usually the harder problems, or the hardest problems that Algebra 1 students and geometry students, these are the problems that they struggle with the most. So here's how I kind of think about it. This is equation 1. You are supposed to come up with equation 2 that is parallel to this line. So we know in equation 2 the slope has to be 1/2, because parallel means equal slopes, 1/2, 1/2, and goes through this point of -4, 1. Now, you have a point, you have a slope. You can use point-slope form. Remember, point-slope form is y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. You can use point-slope form. Point and a slope, point-slope form. I don't. I just prefer to use y equals mx plus b, and I'll kind of show you how it works. I plug in my x, which is -4, and my y coordinate, which is 1, so 1 would go in for y. My slope I know is 1/2. My x value is -4 plus b, and I'm solving for b. I'm just finding my y-intercept. So 1 equals -2 plus b. Add 2 to the other side, I get 3 equals b. So what I just found then is I can answer this question. It's going to be y equals 1/2 x. My b value is 3. So that is an equation. I just wrote an equation of a line that is parallel to the first line. Okay, moving on. Same question, except just a little bit different portion of the question, which is now I want perpendicular. So write an equation. So again, when you see write an equation of a line, when you see this right here, you should be thinking, okay, my final answer has to be y equals mx plus b. It's got to be perpendicular, so you're thinking opposite reciprocal to the given line. So this is line 1. Your job is to come up with a second equation of a line that's perpendicular to this that goes through this point. Well, the first thing we need to do is I'm going to take this equation over here, and I'm going to solve it for y, or put it into slope-intercept form. I'm going to subtract the 3x to the other side, and I'm going to divide everything by -2. And when I do that, I get y equals positive 3/2 x minus 3. So this is not my answer. Some students will think just because they converted this to slope-intercept form that it is the answer. It is not. All we did was convert from standard to y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. So I know my slope for this first line is 3/2. So what does the slope of my second line need to be in order to be perpendicular? It has to be -2/3. It has to be the opposite or negative reciprocal of line 1. And just like before in the previous question, now that I have my slope and my point, I'm going to use y equals mx plus b and just use substitution. So my y value is 1. My slope is -2/3. My x is 3. Again, I'm getting my x and y from the point, plus b. So my 3's would cancel out. I would get 1 equals -2 plus b. I would add 2, and I get 3. Just a coincidence that the two examples had y-intercepts of 3. My final answer is y equals -2/3. That's my slope, and then plus 3. Oop, I forgot the x in there. Y equals -2/3 x plus 3. On the back, there's nothing. We are done with lesson 5, parallel and perpendicular lines and their slopes. Hopefully that was peer review for you from your first 2 years of math, of Algebra 1 and geometry. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them in class. We can tie up any loose ends from this lesson when I see you. Have a great day.